Hi, I'm Kurt Fry. Welcome to Tableau 9 Essential Training. In this course, I'll show you how to use Tableau to visualize your data. I'll start by showing you how to run Tableau, install files to let you connect to your data, and get help if you need it. I'll also show you how to connect to data sources, create visualizations, and sort and filter your data. Chapter 3 shows you how to manage Tableau workbooks, while Chapter 4 demonstrates how to create specific calculations. Later chapters show you how to create heat maps, scatter plots, and other visualizations. Finally, Chapter 10 demonstrates how to summarize and present your data using maps and dashboards. All of these methods provide the power and flexibility you need to visualize your data so you can make good decisions for your company. I'm sure you'll find that your time with Tableau 9 Essential Training will be time well spent. Dive right in. Welcome again to Tableau 9 Essential Training. Before we get started with the main body of the course, I wanted to review a few things that will help you along the way. First, you should have basic computer knowledge. That's things such as using the keyboard, using the mouse, dragging, selecting, and so on. Second, it will help if you have experience with a spreadsheet program. Tableau is a data visualization program, so that means you can bring in data from text files or from Microsoft Excel, and experience in those programs will certainly help you along the way. And finally, you should have a willingness to explore. Tableau is a powerful and very interesting program. It also has a large community built up around it. So take what you learned from this course and use it to build your skills later. If you have a premium subscription to the lynda.com online training library, then you have access to the exercise files for this course. I have downloaded the files onto my desktop into a folder called Exercise Files. When I double-click that folder, I see that I have a different folder for each of the chapters within the course. If I want to work with the files for a particular chapter, I can double-click the chapter folder and find the files there. If you don't have a premium subscription, then you can create your own resources or just follow along. Because you're viewing movies in a course about Tableau, I assume that you're interested in acquiring the software if you don't already have it. In this movie, I will describe where to find the program online and also describe the different versions of Tableau that are available to you. The Tableau software website is the company's name, and that is www.tableau.com, and I've gone to the products page. If you scroll down, and I'll do that using my scroll wheel, you can see that there are three main versions of the Tableau program. The first is Tableau Desktop, and Tableau Desktop is a version of the program that stands alone on your computer. That's what I'm using to record this course. Next is Tableau Server. And this program is intended for organizations and enterprise users. It allows a lot more collaboration than Tableau Desktop does. And next is Tableau Online. Tableau Online is a cloud-based version of the program, and it allows for interaction, but you can access the program through what might be called a thin client as opposed to a full PC. And finally, if I scroll down to the bottom of this web page, we'll see that there is also Tableau Public. Tableau Public is used for public data. Now, it's available for free, but it's important to remember that all of the data that you upload to Tableau Public is available for anyone else who is logged into the site. That means they can see your data, they can use it, they can download it, and they can create visualizations on it. So, while Tableau Public is good for public sharing, websites, blogs, and so on, it's not good for sensitive corporate analysis. And the other product, which is also free, is called Tableau Reader, and it allows anyone who doesn't have Tableau installed on their system to read Tableau files. They can't edit them, but they can at least see their contents. So that's great for sharing if you have colleagues who don't have Tableau available to them. You can go to any one individual product page, such as Tableau Desktop, to see what's interesting about the program. And of course, there's a buy link, and you can purchase the program, or you can download and install a free trial. One of the benefits of Tableau is that you can use it to connect to many different data sources. If you are running Tableau Desktop Edition, which is the edition I'm using for this course, you have built-in connectivity to 6 different types of data sources. You can see these sources in the vertical toolbar to the left of the display. That's here under the Connect heading, and you see that you can connect to Excel, text files, access a statistical file, other file types, and also open data. So as you can see, there are many different ways that you can connect. If you are working with someone who doesn't have data in Excel, then I recommend that you attempt to exchange data using a text file, such as a comma-separated value file. Tableau Server comes with built-in connectivity to more than 40 data sources, so that's a much more powerful version of the program. If you need to connect to a data source not listed here, and you can't output the data to a CSV file, then you can always visit the Tableau website to see which other drivers are available. I have that site open in another window, so I'll just press Alt-Tab to go to Chrome. And you can see the page that you want to go to is www.tableau.com/support/drivers. And here you see that you have database drivers for many different data sources, and they're available for both Mac and Windows. Tableau looks like a reasonably simple program, but there's actually a lot going on under the hood. And one of the ways that you can use Tableau to its full extent is to take advantage of different file types. In this movie, I will describe the different file types that are available to you. First is the Tableau workbook. Those files have a .twb extension. The workbook stores a visualization without including the source data. That is in contrast to the Tableau data source, or .tds file. That type of file stores the server address, password, and other information required to access a data source. The next file type is the Tableau bookmark, which has a .tbm extension. Tableau bookmarks are a connection to a worksheet in another Tableau workbook. Creating these connections let you reference other workbooks from within a file, so you don't have to recreate the visualization in your current file. Next, we have the Tableau data extract, or .tde file. These files store Tableau data as a filtered and aggregated extract. So you might not get the individual results you're looking for, but you will have a look at an aggregated view of your data. And finally, there is the Tableau packaged workbook. These files have a .twbx extension, and they store extracted data and visualizations for viewing in Tableau or Tableau Reader. So those are the basic file types, and now we can move on to working with the program itself. Before I dive into creating data connections and visualizations in Tableau, I wanted to show you how to get help within the program. I've run the Tableau desktop program, and I'll work here without opening a visualization. You can find help within Tableau either within a visualization or from this screen by clicking the Help menu. So I will click the Help menu header to display the options that are available. You can see from the list here that you can open the Help Support System, which is also available by pressing the F1 key. You can get support, which takes you to the Tableau software support pages. You can watch training videos, open sample workbooks, sample galleries, and you can also change aspects of your program, such as your language, settings and performance, and also manage your product keys. In this case, I am most interested in displaying the help system, so I'll go ahead and click the top item, Open Help. You can see that I have gone to onlinehelp.tableau.com, and I've gone to the page that is specifically meant as the welcome page for version 9. If you open up your web browser, you can go to onlinehelp.tableau.com and search for the help files that you want. This help page is divided into two sections. On the left, there is a navigation pane with different sections or chapters, if you like to think of them that way, for connecting to data, building data views, doing maps, dashboards, stories, and so on. And over on the right side, you'll see that there is a list of topics that are available. In this case, I have displayed the Welcome to Tableau desktop page, and you can see that I have a number of links, getting started, connect to data, and so on, that correspond roughly in this case to the items here in the navigation pane. If I want to display an item, I can click it. So for example, if I want to display information about maps, I can click the Maps link, and that takes me to the Maps page. And here I can do a quick start for exploring data in maps, show how to create filled maps, assigning geographic roles to data, and so on. If I want to view any of those topics, I can do that. So I'll just click the Quick Start link here at the top. And there I have my help topic. If I want to go back to the previous page of help that I was looking at, I can click this back button. If I want to go forward, I can click forward. And if a help file I'm looking at has multiple levels, for example, it might have some hidden content that I need to expand, I can click the Expand All button to display all of that content. And finally, if there is a term that I want to search for, I can click in the search box and say if I wanted to look for a tree map, I could type in those words, and there you see I get my map options and other search results. I believe the Tableau 9 help system is laid out very intuitively. If you can't find what you're looking for in the table of contents, you can always search for it. Pretty much any program is confusing the first time you look at it. So I'd like to take a few moments to describe the Tableau user interface so that you have a better idea of what you're looking at when you open the program. I'm using the Tableau workbook called Interface, and you can find it in the Chapter 1 folder of your exercise files collection. This workbook contains a tree map with different order quantities broken down by state. So here you can see that the state of Iowa had the most quantity of items ordered with 510. Illinois was behind with 396. Missouri had 385, and so on, with Virginia all the way at the bottom with a quantity of 75. But now let's take a look at the interface of the program in particular. At the top, you can see a familiar file and toolbar layout. At the top, you have a series of menus that you can open. For example, if you wanted to work with a file, you can click the File menu header. And here you see you can create a new file, open, close, save, save as, and so on. You can also work with the data, connecting to a new data source and so on, perform various tasks with worksheets, and so on all the way to the right side, which contains help, where you can get support, watch training videos, or open the help system by either clicking the Open Help menu item or pressing F1. If you have a menu open, you can click outside of any of the menus to close it. Below the menu bar is the toolbar, and here you have the usual undo and redo buttons, also save, add new data source, create new worksheets, and so on. I get into the specifics of what many of these buttons mean later in the course. At the left side of the program window, we have a couple of panels. The first is the data panel. You can see it here. This gives you an idea of what you're connected to in terms of your data source. It also identifies the different dimensions that are available. I'll scroll up so you can see the top of them. Here I have a table called Customer Info, and the various fields, the address field, city, customer number, first name, full name, last name, and so on. And then a second table called Order Details with Customer ID, Order ID, and Product ID. The indicators to the left of the field name indicate Tableau's best guess as to what the data contains. So address is alphabetical or text data, city is geographical, customer number is number, and so on. Below the dimensions, there are the measures, and these will be numbers that you can use to fuel your visualization. So here we have basically only one, the quantity of items ordered. The Analytics tab contains controls that you can use to summarize your data. And again, that's something I'll get into later. To the right, in what I would think of as the main part of the screen, you can see the visualization here in the middle. And to the left, you can see a number of what are called cards. The first is Pages, which allows you to divide up your data. Filters, which allows you to limit the data that appears. And then you have the Marks area. I admit that the Marks card's name is a little bit cryptic, but basically what it allows you to do is to change the appearance of data and data-related effects such as color or size for what you see here in the visualization. So you can see here that you have controls for changing color, size, and so on. You also have the names of the fields that are listed in the visualization here. And at the bottom, you can see, in this case with the tree map, a range of values. So we're finding the sum of the quantity of items ordered by state. The lowest is 75, and the highest is 510. At the bottom left corner, you can connect to your data source by clicking the Data Source button. Click Sheet 1 to go back to your visualization, and you can also add a new worksheet, a new dashboard, or a new story. And again, those are all things that I'll cover later. The bottom right-hand corner gives you controls so you can go through different pages and also change views. And in the top right, you have the Show Me control, which if you click allows you to change the visualization that appears. And at the very top right, you have the familiar Microsoft Windows program window controls, where you can minimize the window and either maximize it or restore it to its previous shape, and the Close button, which allows you to close the program window altogether. In a lot of ways, Tableau will be familiar to users of Windows programs, but I hope that this movie has helped clear up some of the things that you might not have seen elsewhere. When you are ready to create a visualization within Tableau, you need to connect to an outside data source. In this movie, I will show you how to connect to an Excel workbook, but the skills that you learn here will apply to other types of data sources as well. I have run Tableau Desktop, and now here on the Start screen, I can go to the left, and in the Connect section of the page, I can click the Excel link that's under To a File. So I want to connect to an Excel file. I'll go ahead and click Excel. And doing so opens the Open dialog box. In the Chapter 1 folder of the Exercise Files collection, I see a number of files that are available to me. I'll go ahead and click Product List and click Open. Doing that creates the connection that I wanted. And you can see here that I have Sheet 2, which is the only worksheet within the Product List Excel file. And I can see a preview of the data here. If I want to go to the worksheet that I will use to create this visualization, then I can click Sheet 1 and see the Tableau interface. And having created that connection, I can define the visualization using the fields that are available to me. So as you can see, connecting to a data source is fairly straightforward. All you do is select the type of file you want to connect to and identify that file in your system. If you connect to a Microsoft Excel file, it's pretty straightforward. If you connect to Microsoft SQL Server or other database programs, it's possible that you might need to enter your credentials, such as a username or a password. One of the fundamental principles of good data design is spreading your data out so that individual tables store information about specific business objects. For example, you might have one table that stores information about your customers. That could include their customer ID number, the name of the company they work for, the city they live in, and so on. Another table might contain information about individual orders. You could then track which customer placed a particular order by storing that customer's ID number in the database record for that order. So if you've ever wondered why an online customer service representative asks for your customer number rather than your name, that's because you might very well have the same name as someone else, but it is unlikely that you would have the same customer ID number. In this movie, I will show you how to connect data sources that have a field in common. I have opened Tableau Desktop, and I'll go over to the Connect area of the Start window and click Excel. That opens the Chapter 1 folder of the Exercise Files archive. If that didn't appear for you, please navigate there now and click Customer Orders, which is the Excel file we'll connect to, and then click Open. That displays the Customer Orders screen, and we can now create a link or a join between our two tables, which are here, the Customer Info worksheet and the Order Details worksheet. What you want to do is drag the Customer Info table to the drag sheets here area, and then order details to drag sheets here as well. So here, after I have added the fields, I see what's called the join window. What I need to do is to define a join or connection between these two tables. So I'll click the new join clause, and for that I need to enter in a data source. So that will be the customer number field, and then that is set to equal. And then over in order details, I'll click the down arrow that appears when I hover my mouse pointer over this column, and I have customer ID. So note that the two fields don't have the same name, but as it turns out, they do contain the same information. And you can see below that the tables have been joined together. So I'll go ahead and click the close box on the join dialog, and I'll use the horizontal scroll bar to scroll to the side, and you can see that the two fields are in fact joined. And if I switch to the worksheet by clicking Sheet 1, I can see that I have my customer info here at the top from one table, and below that I have order details. And that is how you create a join from data sources that have a field in common. Data files with a tabular format, meaning they use a strict column and row layout, make it easy to bring data into analysis and visualization programs like Tableau. However, some data files don't follow exactly that layout. Tableau 9 introduces the data interpreter, which helps you bring irregularly structured data into Tableau. As my sample, I will use the monthly data Excel workbook, and you can find that in the Chapter 2 folder of your exercise files collection. This worksheet within the monthly data workbook contains a table of data, but there is also a stray value here indicating year 2014 at the top left corner. And as we'll see when we switch over to Tableau, that can cause a problem with data import, and that is where the data interpreter comes in handy. So I will click the close button at the top right corner of the Excel program window to close it and switch over to Tableau. Now that I'm in Tableau, I can create a data connection to that file. So I'll go over to the Connect panel and click Excel. And then in Chapter 2, I will click Monthly Data and click Open. Tableau creates the connection to the data source, and you can see that there is a problem with the data. I have year 2014 as a row by itself, and Tableau has failed to recognize month, department, and sales as column headers. However, there is also a note above it indicating or asking if the data looks right. And if it doesn't, then Tableau Data Interpreter might be able to help. Go ahead and click the Turn On button. The Data Interpreter takes a look, and you can see that it has in fact cleaned up your data. The year 2014 label is gone. Month, department, and sales are correctly identified as column headers. And you can click Sheet 1 to go to your worksheet and start working with your data normally. The data interpreter can handle simple cases, such as a stray label somewhere within your table or within a worksheet. If you need to do some more advanced processing, the data interpreter can help you identify what needs to be cleaned up. After you bring your data into Tableau, you can create a visualization quickly by using the Show Me feature. In this movie, I will show you how to create a data table, and then you show me to create a visualization based on that data arrangement. My sample file is the Show Me Tableau workbook, and you can find it in the Chapter 2 folder of your exercise files collection. This workbook contains a data source already connected, and it's actually two tables from the same workbook, customer info and order details. And what I want to do is create a visualization quickly based on one of the measures that I have. So over on the left, you can see in the measures part of the data dialog, I have a field called quantity. So I'll go ahead and click that to select it. And then on the right side of the toolbar, I will click the Show Me control. That displays a list or a palette of the visualizations that I can create using the data that I've identified. So you can see here that I can create a table, I could create a horizontal bar chart, or I could create a histogram. In this case, I'll go ahead and create a table. And when I do, you see that I have a total of 10,096. If I were to create a histogram based on quantity, I would see that I have 3 different quantities for the orders, quantity 1, quantity 2, and quantity 3. And the histogram creates a count of each of those quantities. So I have about 1,600, 1,599 of quantity 1, 1,706 of quantity 2, and 1,695 of quantity 3. I'll press Ctrl-Z to undo that visualization, and Ctrl-Z again. That will take away the data table that I created. And now let's say that I want to create a visualization based on 2 fields. For example, product ID and quantity. So I'll click product ID, hold down the Control key, and click quantity. Now the Show Me palette displays a lot more possibilities that I have. So in this case, I'm going to create a tree map, which is this control here, this button. And what that does is display, using color and size, the total quantity of the various items by product ID that have been ordered. So I'll click the tree map button, and I can see the tree map there. So for example, I can see that product number 78 had the largest quantity ordered of 153, product 12, 141, product 60 was 140, 58 was 140 as well, and so on. And it goes all the way down to product 40, which had a quantity of 79. So as you can see, you can create very quick visualizations using Show Me. And if you want to get the Show Me palette out of the way and just make it a button on the toolbar, you can click the Close button and minimize its size. After you create a Tableau file, you can change the organization of your data by manipulating fields. In this movie, I will show you how to add fields to a visualization and then how to reorder and reorganize them to emphasize different aspects of your data. I'm working with the field order sample file. You can find that in the Chapter 2 folder of the exercise files collection. The field order Tableau workbook is based on a data collection in Excel workbook that has 3 sheets. The first is customer information. That includes address, customer number, name, and so on. Next is order details, which has customer ID, the order ID, and then the product ID. And then scrolling down, you can see the products table that contains the product category, product name, and the product ID. This visualization is blank, but I can add fields to it by dragging them from the dimensions area or the measures area to the body of the visualization. So I'll start by adding product name to the rows area. So I'll drag product name to the rows area here. And you can see that the product name pill, as it's called in the program, also appears on the rows shelf. Now I can add other fields if I want. So I'll add state to the columns shelf. I'll drag it there. So I can see that there is at least one order for an activity hoop from Arkansas. And now if I want to see how many of them have been ordered, I can drag the quantity field, which is from down here in measures. So I'll drag quantity to the data area. And there I can see the quantity of items that were ordered. If I want to change the location of some of these fields, I can drag the pills from the shelves, in this case column and rows, to different orientations or different positions. So let's say that I want to put state as a row header at a higher level of organization than product name. To do that, I would drag the state pill down to the left of product name, and you can see a light blue downward pointing triangle, which indicates where the field will go. When I release the left mouse button, I can see the products that were ordered from Alabama, as well as the quantity. If I scroll down, I can see Alaska, then Arkansas, then Colorado. And one nice thing about this view is that you can see the Arkansas state name stays in place when I'm scrolling. So as long as there are still Arkansas values displayed, we'll see that name. Same for Colorado now, then Connecticut, and so on. If you want to remove a field from a visualization, in this case, I'll pull product name out. You can drag it from here back over to the data area, and doing so removes it from the visualization. Changing the way your data is organized within your visualization is pretty straightforward. Take all the time you need to find the orientation or organization that meets your needs exactly. When you visualize data in Tableau, most of the time you will want to find the sum of whatever data you have collected. For example, the sum of commissions due to salespeople or the sum of all sales. There might be times, however, when you want to do a different kind of analysis. For example, finding the average value of sales for a given department within a given month. In this movie, I will show you how to change the summary operation for a visualization. My sample file is the operation workbook, and you can find it in the Chapter 2 folder of your exercise files collection. I currently have the sum of the total of sales by state and by category. And let's say that instead of finding the total, that I want to find the average of each individual sale. To do that, I can go to the marks card and click the pills down arrow and point to measure. And there you can see there are a number of measures available. I'll click average, which is the second item. And when I do, the workbook changes so that it now displays the average value of each sale. For the most part, you'll want to stay with sum, so I'll go ahead and switch back. So once again, clicking the down arrow of the pill in the marks card, pointing to measure, and clicking the measure that I want. It is good to know that these other measures are available if you want them. Well-structured data collections divide information into discrete units. You would store information about customers and their orders in separate tables, for example. And you should also split customer names into first name, middle name, and last name columns when you can. If you need to work with data that combines multiple values into a single column, you can try to split the text into multiple columns to make it easier to work with. I will show you how to do that in this movie. And I've started out just with Tableau open to the main start screen. I want to connect to an Excel file. So over in the Connect area, I'll click Excel. And in the Chapter 2 folder of the exercise files collection, I will click Combined Data and click Open. When I do, I go to the import screen of Tableau, and I'll take a look at my data. I see that I have my product ID and my price in separate columns, but I see a column called Category Name, and there I see the dance department, followed by a colon, and then what is probably a product name, ballet slippers. And as I go down the list, I see, yep, ballroom shoes, dance and fitness shoes. And if I keep going down, I get to sport, and I see the same pattern. So what I'd like to do is to create 2 new columns based on this data, one for the category and one for the name of the product. To do that, I can hover the mouse pointer over the column header for category name, click the down arrow, and click Split. Doing so splits the data based on the best criteria that Tableau could figure out, and in this case, the colon between the 2 values was a dead giveaway. If I want to rename these columns, I can do so. I just need to hover my mouse pointer over the down arrow and click Rename. And I'll just call this Category and hit Enter for OK. And I'll do the same, clicking the down arrow, clicking Rename, and I'll just call this Product. And OK. With all that in place, I can go to my worksheet and start creating my visualization. Data analysis and visualization are just part of the business analysis picture. You also need to communicate your findings effectively. Tableau 9 includes stories, which were first introduced in an update to version 8. Stories let you create a sequence of story points consisting of worksheets in your workbook to build a persuasive narrative about your insights. I will show you the basics of creating stories, and I'll use the Stories Tableau workbook, which you can find in the Chapter 2 folder of your exercise files collection. This workbook has 3 sheets. There's Product State, which shows this table, State Tree Map, which shows a tree map of sales based on state level data, and then a column chart or vertical bar graph showing sales by state. Let's say that I want to create a story based on these 3 sheets. To do that, I can go to the taskbar at the bottom and click the New Story button. It's the third on the right. When I click that, I get a storyboard, and I can drag my first sheet from the Dashboards and Worksheets area to the Drag a Sheet Here area. And I'll just go in order. So I'll start by dragging in Product State, and I can add a caption. So I'll click in the Add a Caption button, and I'll call it Product Sales Table. And that's all there is to it. I have just created my first page in my story. I can now add a second story point. I can either create a story point from another worksheet by clicking New Blank Point, or if I wanted, I could create a new story point based on this worksheet. For that, I would click Duplicate. In this case, I want to go to a new sheet, so I'll click New Blank Point, and 2 things happen. The first is I get a new storyboard or new story point, and also you can see that there is a timeline here at the top. So I have Product Sales Table. That was the first thing I entered, and now I can add a caption for my second. So I'll call this State Tree Map, and I will drag the State Tree Map worksheet to the Drag a Sheet Here area, and you can see that it's been added. I'll do a similar process to enter my third worksheet as a story point. So I'll click New Blank Point, and I'll click Add a Caption. I'll call this one Column Chart, and I'll drag the By State worksheet to the Drag a Sheet Here area. You can see that there. And if I want to go forward and back through the story, I can either use the directional arrows, or I can click directly on the story point that I want to go to. If you want to edit the story title, you can right-click the story title, click Edit Title, and edit it and format it within the Edit Title dialog box. So in this case, I'll call it State Level Analysis, and click OK. And there you see, the title has been changed. If I want to format my story, I can go to the Format menu and click Story. And here I have all kinds of controls that I can use to change the background shading. That affects the body of the story itself, as opposed to the individual visualizations. And when I'm done doing my formatting, I can click the Close button on the Format Story pane, and it goes away. As you can see, stories are a terrific communication tool. You can build up your narrative and get your message across effectively. You can use Tableau to create effective creative visualizations. But what if you want to look at the data that underlies a visualization you've created? You can do that from inside the program, and I'll show you how to do that using the Display Data Tableau workbook, which you can find in the Chapter 3 folder of your exercise files collection. This visualization is a simple column chart with sales by product category. If I want to see the data behind this visualization, I can go to the menu bar and open the Data menu, and then point to the item at the bottom of this menu. That information or that item will change based on the source that you used. In this case, I have customer info plus products, customers, and orders. So when I point to that, I can go over to the flyout menu that appears and click the View Data item. When I do, I see a dialog box with a grid that I can use to view the data. I can scroll down to see different rows, and I can also drag horizontally if the data extends across more than one screen. I'll go ahead and scroll back. I can also copy values from the grid. So let's say that I was interested in this first row, the address and also the city. So I can just click and drag across, and doing so selects those 3 cells. I can then click copy, which copies the data to the clipboard in the operating system, and I can paste it into other applications if I want. I can select entire rows by using the row headers. So for example, if I click this row, or this row's header, then it selects the entire row, and if I drag down, I can extend the selection. Instead of dragging, I can use the Shift key. So if I hold down the Shift key and click here, it selects every row down to where I clicked. And if I want to select non-contiguous ranges, say for example, this row here, I can hold down the Control key and click its row header, and it selects that row by itself. And again, I can copy and paste to other applications. When you're done, you can click the Close button to close this dialog box. Looking at the data behind a visualization can be very helpful. You have to go a couple of levels deep in the menu to find that option, but once you do, I'm certain that you will use it a lot. When you create a Tableau workbook and add data to it, Tableau displays that data on a worksheet. In this movie, I will show you how to add, duplicate, and rename worksheets in your Tableau workbook. The sample workbook that I will use is the Add Worksheet file, and you can find that in the Chapter 3 folder of the Exercise Files collection. This workbook contains a single sheet, and if you go down to the Sheet tab bar at the bottom left, you will see that the sheet is named Sheet 1. And if you hover your mouse pointer over one of the sheet tabs, you will see a preview of the data on that sheet. If you want to add a worksheet to a workbook, you can go down to the bottom left corner of the user interface again and click the New Worksheet button. Doing so adds a new worksheet, and it leaves you with the controls to add data from your existing data connection. You can see all of the fields here on the left. If you want to duplicate a worksheet, you can do that by right-clicking its tab. In this case, I will duplicate Sheet 1. So I'll move the mouse pointer over the Sheet 1 tab, right-click, and then from the shortcut menu that appears, I'll click Duplicate Sheet. So now I have a sheet called Sheet 3, which was next in the sequence of Sheet 1, Sheet 2, and Sheet 3. And it's available with the same visualization that I had duplicated from Sheet 1. Note also that when I duplicated Sheet 1, Sheet 3 appeared to its right. So that means that I now have them in the order Sheet 1, Sheet 3, and Sheet 2. I'll teach you how to change the order of sheets in your workbook in another movie. If you want to rename a worksheet, you can do that by double-clicking its Sheet tab. In this case, I'll rename Sheet 3, which is currently active. And all I need to do now, with the name highlighted, is type in a new name. So I'll call it Category Sales, and press Enter. You shouldn't create so many worksheets that your workbooks are crowded and confusing. Just create the ones you need and rename them so that you have a very good idea which data is summarized and where. After you have worked in Tableau for a while, it's likely that your workbooks will contain multiple worksheets. In this movie, I will demonstrate some useful skills for managing workbooks that contain multiple worksheets. Those are reordering, clearing, and deleting your sheets. The sample file I'll use is the Reorder Tableau workbook, and you can find that in the Chapter 3 folder of the Exercise Files collection. This workbook contains 3 sheets, and we can see them on the tab bar at the bottom left. They are State Orders, Category Sales, and Heat Map. If you want to change the order or the position of a particular sheet inside of your workbook, you can click using your left mouse button and drag a particular tab to a new location. So for example, if I wanted to relocate state orders to the right of category sales, I could just drag the state orders tab to the right and position it between category sales and heat map. Unfortunately, one limitation of my recording software is that I can't actually do the drag while I'm recording. But please just remember that you are able to drag state orders or any other sheet tab to its new location, and you'll see a small black triangle indicating where the sheet will go when you release the mouse button. To clear a worksheet, just select the Sheet tab so it's displayed. Then on the Worksheet menu, point to Clear and click Sheet. Doing so removes all of the visualization settings and takes all the fields out of the visualization area and moves them back to the dimensions or the measures area. If you want to restore the visualization you just got rid of, you can press Ctrl-Z and the clear operation is undone. Now finally, if you want to delete a worksheet, you can right-click the Sheet tab of the sheet you want to get rid of. In this case, I'll right-click the Heat Map Sheet tab and click Delete Sheet. Please note that there is no warning. Tableau assumes you know what you want to do and just deletes the sheet. However, unlike in Microsoft Excel, where deleting a worksheet can't be undone, in this case, if you press Ctrl-Z, then Tableau will bring the sheet back for you. You should always make sure to delete any worksheets you don't need. It removes clutter from your workbook and makes it easy to understand the information. Of course, you need to make sure that you really don't need the data or information on that worksheet. So if in doubt, leave the worksheet in, but if you can safely get rid of it, you probably should. When you create a Tableau workbook, you might want to bring your colleague's eye to the most important data. That usually means calling out the worksheet that contains that data. And in this movie, I will show you how to highlight a worksheet tab by changing its color. The sample file I'll use is the Tab Color workbook, and you can find that in the Chapter 3 folder of the Exercise Files collection. This workbook contains 3 sheets, and I have currently displayed the Heat Map worksheet. You can see its name down here in the bottom left corner on the tab bar. If I want to change that tab's color, all I need to do is right-click it, and from the shortcut menu that appears, point to the color item. It's at the bottom. Then slide over to the right and select a color. In this case, I'll select green, so I'll click it, and you can see that the bottom bar of the Heat Map Sheet tab is now green. If I click to another sheet, you can see that the highlighting remains. If you want to remove the color from a sheet tab, just right-click the tab, point to color, and then click the top item in the menu that appears, which is None. Doing so removes the color and turns the Sheet tab back to its original appearance. After you have created a visualization, it's possible that you want to remove some elements from the Tableau interface so that you have an unobstructed view of your data. In this movie, I will show you how to hide and redisplay elements of the interface. My sample file is the Elements workbook, and you can find it in the Chapter 3 folder of your Exercise Files collection. When I speak about workbook elements that you can hide or redisplay, I'm referring to things such as the columns shelf or the rows shelf or any of what are called cards here to the left of the visualization itself. Those are the Pages card, filters, marks, and the quantity or what I call the data card. Those are the elements that are displayed by default, but there are others that are not. So I'll show you how to work with both the items that you have to look for and the ones that are displayed when you run Tableau with no modifications. In both cases, you go to the Worksheet menu, and if you go down to about the middle, you will see a number of options: Show Title, Caption, and Summary. These 3 items are elements of the Tableau interface or visualization that are turned off by default, but you can turn them on or off as you like. If I click Show Title, you can see that the title shelf appears and it contains the text heat map. If I want, I can edit the title, hide it, format it, or hide the card entirely. In this case, I'll edit the title, so I'll click Edit Title. That displays the Edit Title dialog box, and I can replace the text here by selecting it and then typing over it. And I'll just call it Category Map. I won't bother with any of the formatting. That should be familiar to you. And I'll go ahead and click OK. And there I see the new title that I just entered. If I want to hide the title shelf or title element, I can once again open the worksheet menu and click Show Title. Any element in the worksheet menu that currently has a check mark next to it is displayed. Anyone that doesn't is hidden. So now let me show you the other two elements. So once again, I'll open the worksheet menu and click Show Caption. The caption appears at the bottom of the visualization, and it's a commentary on what the visualization does. And in this case, it indicates that the sum of quantity by size is broken down by product category versus state. So that's actually a very useful summary, and you'll often find that the caption adds useful information. You have to look for it, and it's a little small, but if your screen resolution allows for it, then by all means, you should use it. I'll turn it back off from the worksheet menu, click Show Caption, and the final of the three elements that I'll discuss here on Worksheet, and click Show Summary. The summary appears at the right side of the visualization, and it just contains a summary of the data, such as the number of measurements, the sum, the average, and other measures. If I want to get rid of it, I can go back to the Worksheet menu and click Show Summary. We also have the worksheet elements that are called cards. That includes the column shelf, the row shelf, and also the pages, filters, marks, and what I call the data card. To work with those, I can go back to the worksheet menu and point to Show Cards, and you can see the flyout menu here on the right. I can either reset any changes that I've made, which in this case would bring them all back, or I can click an item to either hide it or redisplay it. I won't go through all of them, but what I will do is click the Pages Shelf item, and you can see on the left that the Pages shelf has been hidden, or the Pages card. If I want to bring it back, I can go back to the Worksheet menu, point to Show Cards, click Pages Shelf, and it comes back, but it comes back at the bottom of the list of shelves. I can drag it back by positioning the mouse pointer over its title bar and dragging it to its new position. You can see a black horizontal bar indicating where it'll go when I drop. And when I release the left mouse button, there it goes. Many Tableau visualizations take up a lot of space on your worksheet. That means you should get rid of any elements that you don't need from the interface. Feel free to hide whatever you don't want, and rest assured you can always bring it back. When you make changes to a Tableau workbook, you can save them in a number of different ways. As a bonus, Tableau has a built-in function that lets you revert to the last saved state of your workbook. It's very handy, and it can save a lot of trouble closing and reopening a file. In this movie, I will show you how to use several techniques for saving. My sample file is the Saving Workbook, and you can find it in the Chapter 3 folder of your Exercise Files collection. So I have my workbook that I just opened. I'll just make one change to it so I have something to save. I will drag the product category pill from the columns area over to the dimensions area. Doing so removes it from the visualization, and now it's just down to state. Now that I've made a change, I can save it as a workbook file. There are a couple of ways to do that. First, I could press Control-S to save it as a keyboard shortcut, or I can open the File menu and point to Save. Doing so would save the file under the same name. If I want to save the file under a new name, or perhaps in a new location, or both, then I can open the File menu and click Save As. That displays the Save As dialog box, and I can change the directory, or I can go to File Name and type a new name, or I can even save the file as a new type. In this case, I'll just click Cancel rather than saving it. Now, note that I did not actually save my change yet. That's because I want to show you how revert to saved works. So if you did save any of your work, go ahead and make another change so that you can play along. You won't see exactly what it is that I see on my screen, but I think you'll understand what it's worth when I show you how to do it. So reverting to saved takes your file's state back to its most recent saved position. In this case, that will have the products in the column shelf. So if I open the File menu and click Revert to Saved or press F12, then I get a dialog box indicating that reverting the workbook will discard all unsaved changes, and it asks if I want to continue. Now I can either click Cancel to go back to work, or I can click the Revert button, which takes me back to the last saved state of this file. So I'll click Revert, and you see I go back to the state with product category in the column shelf. Revert to Saved is a terrific feature, and I wish more programs had it. Tableau lets you create terrific visualizations. Once you create them, of course, you will want to share them. There are a number of ways you can do that, and in this movie, I will show you how to print a visualization to a PDF file. PDF is the portable document format, and it's a handy way to send your documents to anyone who might not have Tableau. In this movie, I will show you how to create a PDF from a Tableau visualization. My sample file is called Save as PDF, and it's a Tableau workbook you can find in the Chapter 3 folder of your exercise files collection. To save a file as a PDF, open the File menu, and then about halfway down, click Print to PDF. Doing so displays the Print to PDF dialog box, and you have a number of options. If your workbook contains more than one sheet, you can select the entire workbook radio button. Otherwise, you can just leave active sheets selected. If you have multiple sheets and you have selected them, you can also use the Selected Sheets item. You can also set your paper size, whether you want to have portrait or landscape format. Portrait has the short ends on top and the long ends on the sides, whereas landscape has the long ends on top and bottom and the short ends on the left and right. The two other options you can select are to view the PDF file after printing. I pretty much always leave that one checked so that I can see the file I just created. And you can also show selections. Selections would be, for example, if you have any items in a table that are selected or highlighted. That's what that would show. Everything looks good, so I will go ahead and click OK. The Save PDF dialog box appears, and I can give my file a name. I'll go ahead and change it to category by state. I type that in the file name box. My file type is PDF, so I'll go ahead and click Save. And because of the options that I clicked earlier, my PDF appears in Adobe Reader. Now I can copy the file, email it, and so on. This PDF is not interactive, but it is a visual and very portable version of what I created. Tableau is a very useful and versatile program, but not everyone has a copy. If you want to share your Tableau workbooks with others who might not have Tableau, or at least not the full version, you can do so by creating what is called a packaged workbook. Individuals who don't have the full version of Tableau can view packaged workbooks in the Tableau viewer, which they can download from the Tableau software website for free. I will show you how to create a packaged workbook, and I'll use the packaged sample file. That is a Tableau workbook you can find in the Chapter 3 folder of your exercise files collection. Creating a packaged workbook is actually a very straightforward process. To do it, you just open the File menu, and about a third of the way down, you will see Export Packaged Workbook. Go ahead and click that item. Doing so displays the Export Packaged Workbook dialog box. You can use the navigation controls in what is just a slightly different version of the Save As dialog box to select a new folder. And you can also, if you want, type a new file name. In this case, I will call it category by state. And the file type is already set to Tableau packaged workbook, which is exactly what I want. I'll click the Save button, and I have created my packaged workbook, and I can find it in the Chapter 3 folder of the Exercise Files archive. Now that you've saved a packaged workbook, you can share it with your colleagues, and they can look at it and view its contents using the Tableau viewer. One of the best aspects of the Tableau program is the selection of built-in functions and operators that let you create calculations quickly. In this movie, I will describe some of the more frequently used operators and built-in functions, and I hope it will save you time and help you gather important information about your business. The first operator is the plus sign that's used for addition. And one thing I should note is that it's also used for addition using dates. So for example, if you have a date August 2nd, 2015, and you want to find out what would be 10 days beyond that, you would get August 12th, 2015, just by adding the number 10. You can also use the plus sign if you have text or string data to concatenate two values together. The minus sign is used for subtraction and negation, and again, that works with dates as well. The asterisk is used for multiplication, the forward slash for division, and if you need to do modular division, which returns the remainder, then you use the percent sign. So for example, 5% 2, or 5 mod 2, would return 1, which is the remainder. You often see this used if you are packing cases of bottles or perhaps cans of a product, and you want to know how many you'll have left over. The caret is used for exponents. So for example, 2 caret 3 is 2 to the third power, or 8. And then you also have the usual series of comparison operators. Double equal is used for identical to. The single equal sign tests for equality between values. It can also be used for assignment. Then you have the greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to symbols, or operators. Not equal to, which is either the exclamation point followed by an equal sign, or a less than sign followed by a greater than sign. And you also have 3 logical operators, and, or, and not. Now let's talk about some commonly used functions. The most common, and most common by far actually, is sum, which finds the sum of a set of values, perhaps a field, perhaps a column from a table, and so on. Average finds the average, that's AVG. Min and max find the smallest and largest values of a data set. So if you have the values 1 through 10, 1 would be the min, and 10 would be the max. STDEV, or standard deviation, finds the standard deviation of a set of values. If you're doing business analysis, perhaps of a process, and you want to know what the standard deviation is, you'll use standard deviation to measure variance in a process. Perhaps if you're filling bottles, or if you have order fulfillment times, you can use the standard deviation to analyze the amount of variance in a process. Next is ABS, which returns the absolute value or distance from 0 of a number. So the absolute value of 6 would be 6, where the absolute value of -5 would be 5. Ceiling rounds a number up to the next integer. So if you have 23.1, that would be rounded up to 24. And floor rounds a number down to the previous integer. So if you have 23.9, that would be rounded down to 23. And finally, you have round, which has 2 arguments, a number and then the number of decimal points. What that does is round a number up or down to a specified number of digits, and that includes digits after the decimal point. The round function rounds a number up if the decimal value is 0.5 or greater, and down if it is less than 0.5. So for example, 25.5 would be rounded up to 26, and 25.49 would be rounded down. If you round to a number of decimals, say for example you round 25.49 to the first decimal place, that would be rounded to 25.5. This is just a quick look at the number of functions that are available to you. There are quite a few, so I encourage you to dig into the help system and find the ones that you need for your analysis. When you analyze your data in Tableau, it's possible that your original data source might not contain all the values you want. For example, you might have the quantity of items ordered and also the price of each item, but you might not have the total, that is quantity times price, in your original data set. In this movie, I will show you how to calculate values based on the data you do have by creating a calculated field. My sample file is the calculated field workbook, and you can find it in the Chapter 2 folder of your exercise files collection. So once again, I have a table, and it's based on data that I can see over here in the Data tab. I have two measures. The first is quantity from order details, and the second is price. So what I want to do is create a new field, perhaps called total, that will multiply the quantity times the price to find the total value of orders for each of the products. To do that, I go up beside Dimensions on the Data task pane and click the down arrow. And from the list of items that appear, I click Create Calculated Field. That displays the Calculated Field dialog box, and I can type in a name for the calculation. I'll just call it Total. And then I'll click down below. And from here, I can drag in the first field that I want to use. And that will be quantity. So I'll just drag it from the Data task pane to here in the calculation editor. And you can see that the field name is surrounded in square brackets. Now I want to multiply. So I'll type an asterisk and then a space, and then I'll drag over the second field, and that is price. So there I have my calculation. It's very simple, just quantity times price. And when I click OK, my new calculated field called total appears in the Data task pane. And when I drag the sum of quantity out, I go back to having no data in the body of the table. And when I drag total over, I get the total value of my orders. Now, in the best case, all the information that you want will be in your original data source. But if it's not, calculated fields let you figure out what you need to know. One of the new capabilities of Tableau 9 is that you can create a custom calculation by adding a formula to one of the shelves in the program window. In this movie, I will show you how to create one of those custom calculations, and my sample file is called Quick Custom, and it's available in the Chapter 4 folder of the exercise files collection. In this workbook, I have data for products and orders. Specifically, I have the quantity of items that were ordered in each order, and also the price of each individual product. What I don't have is the price or the total revenue from each order, and that would be quantity times price. So what I want to do is to create a field quickly that I can add to my data area. To do that, I can go to the Marks shelf and double-click. That opens an editing area. And I can type in the name of the first field in square brackets. So what I want to do is multiply quantity times price. So I'll type a square bracket, left square bracket specifically, and then quantity. I'll use autocomplete to enter it, then a space, then an asterisk, which is for multiplication, then another left square bracket to start the name of the second field, and that is price. I'll go ahead and click that from the autocomplete list, and I can apply it by pressing enter. And there you see my field. It's available as a pill, but it doesn't show up over here on the side. It's only available here in the marks area. When I drag that pill to the data area, you can see that the value has been added. In another movie, I showed you how to create a custom calculation or a calculated field. This is how you create a quick calculation without creating a new field. If you do want to create a calculated field, to find a sum or total that isn't available in your original data source, creating a quick calculation on a shelf is a great way to enhance the data that you already have. Gathering your Tableau data into a table lets you discover important insights about your data. You can enhance your data by adding table calculations and also totals and grand totals. In this movie, I will show you how to add totals and grand totals as well as table calculations to your data in Tableau. My sample file is the Table Calc workbook, and you can find that in the Chapter 4 folder of your exercise files collection. If you want to add row or column totals to your data, then you need to have it laid out as a table, as I do here. Then go to the Analysis menu, point to Totals, and you can show row grand totals or column grand totals. I'll do both. So the first thing I'll do is click Show Row Grand Totals. And you can see that each row has a total of all values. So 123 plus 635 plus 110 plus 3127 plus 1073 is 5068, and so on for the other rows in the table. If I wanted to do the same thing for the columns, I could once again go to the Analysis menu, point to Totals, and click Show Column Grand Totals. Those appear at the bottom, so I'll scroll down, and there I see the totals for the columns. And just a very quick look indicates that I make most of my money from the sport and work categories. If I want to turn these totals off, I can go back to the Analysis menu, point to Totals, and click whichever of the two I want to get rid of. We're currently looking at the column grand total, so I'll click that. And the checkbox or check mark is cleared, so now it's gone. If you want to change the way that data is summarized within the body of the table, go over to the Marks area and hover the mouse pointer over the pill that represents the data field. Then click the down arrow, and toward the bottom of the menu that appears, point to Quick Table Calculation. And here you see that you have a number of different calculations that you can apply. So let's say that I want to find the percent of total contribution for each of the cells. So I'll go over and click Percent of Total. And now I see the percent of the total for each row. So for Alabama, balance was a little over 2%, about 2.5%. Dance was 12.5%. Play was 2.2% roughly. Sport 61.8% or 61.7%, and work 21.2% roughly. And you can see those different percentages for each of the various cells within your data. If you want to remove that calculation and go back to the normal display of values, once again, hover the mouse pointer over the data field's pill, click the down arrow, and click Clear Table Calculation. And you're back to your original data. One terrific new capability introduced in Tableau 9 is the level of detail expression. Most calculations happen at a specific level, such as the sheet level, table row level, and so on. Level of detail expressions let you specify the level at which each part of the calculation occurs. In this movie, I will show you how to define a level of detail expression and give an example of its use. My sample file is the Level of Detail workbook, and you could find it in the Chapter 4 folder of your exercise files collection. I currently have the sum of revenue for all 50 states and the 5 departments for my company, but what I want to do is discover the difference from the average for each of these sales values. So that means I need to do two things. I need to know my revenue, which I already have, and I need to know the average of sales. That means that I'll be looking at individual row level data and also aggregate data at the sheet level. So let's see how to do that. I need to create a calculated field. So I'll go over to the data area and click the down arrow and click Create Calculated Field. That opens the field editor or the calculation editor. I'll give a name for my calculation. I'll call that diff from AVG for average. Then I'll click below in the editing area. I want to find the difference between my revenue and the average revenue. So the first thing I'll do is add the revenue field by dragging it over from the data area or the data pane. Then I'll subtract. And what I want to subtract from that is the average of all sales. Now let me show you what would happen if I did it the wrong way. So if I were to type in AVG, which is the average function name, then a left parentheses to start adding arguments. And the argument is the revenue field. I want to find the average of all revenue. So I'll type a left square bracket and then revenue and a right parentheses. And you can see the note that the calculation contains errors. And if I click the down arrow here, I see that I cannot mix aggregate and non-aggregate arguments with this function. And that's what I'm doing here. I have revenue on the detail level, and I have the average of all revenue, which is an aggregate measure. But in Tableau 9, you can add curly brackets to allow this sort of mixing of aggregate and detail terms. So I'll click to the left of AVG and type a left curly bracket, then to the right and a right curly bracket, and you can see that now the calculation is valid. And when I click OK, my field is created. I'll drag sum of revenue out, and I'll drag difference from average in. And there you can see that pretty much everything is below average except for sport and work. That is an indication that the sport and work categories are turning out a lot of revenue. And it doesn't mean that balance, dance, and play aren't worthwhile. It just means they don't make as much money. Anyone who has ever analyzed business data knows that order matters. If you have time data, such as data divided by month, then it makes sense to put the months in chronological order: January, February, March, and so on. It doesn't make sense to put the months in alphabetical order, where April comes before August with nothing in between. In this movie, I will show you how to sort your data based on the values in a single field. My sample file is the Sort by Field workbook, and you can find that in the Chapter 5 folder of the Exercise Files archive. This visualization displays a column of sales by state, and the states are currently in alphabetical order. But let's say that I want to sort by the values in the quantity field. I can do that in a couple of different ways. The first is to go to the toolbar, and about halfway across the toolbar, there are two buttons: the Sort Ascending by Quantity button, or just Sort Ascending, and the Sort Descending button. As the names imply, the Sort Ascending button puts the lowest values on top and the largest value on the bottom, and Sort Descending does the opposite. It puts the largest value on the top and goes down to the smallest. So let's say that I want to sort in descending order with the largest values on top. All I need to do is click the Sort Descending button on the toolbar, and my visualization updates to display the new order. I can also tell that the state field has had a sort applied to it because this icon here, the descending sort icon, appears at the right edge of the state pill. If I want a little bit more power in my sort, I can hover the mouse pointer over the state pill, click the downward pointing triangle that appears, and click Sort. And I'll drag the dialog box up so it's a little easier to see. This is the Sort dialog box, and it allows me to perform a number of different sorts based on my data. First, I can select my sort order, either ascending or descending, and I can also sort by a number of different criteria. I can sort in data source order. So let's say, for example, I had 4 regions: north, south, east, and west. Instead of going east, north, south, and west, which would be alphabetical order, I could set my source order as north, south, east, and west, and have that as my sort criteria. I can also go in alphabetical order, which is what I had to start with the states, or I can sort by a field. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm sorting by quantity, and you can see that field here, and the aggregation is sum. I can change either of those values if I want to. So for example, I could change from quantity to number of records and stay with sum. And when I click apply, you see that the sort changed a little bit. It didn't change a lot, but it did change. And you can tell that it changed because instead of having the values in strictly descending order by quantity, you can see that Georgia with 343 is above Oregon with 345. And what that tells us is that there were more orders from Georgia than there were from Oregon, even though the ending quantity of items ordered is smaller. I can also set a manual order. So if I click the manual button, I see the states in the order in which they are currently listed. So if I wanted to take Missouri to the top, regardless of its value, I could click Missouri and then click the up button, moving it up to the top, click apply, and you see the change. If I want to get rid of the sort entirely, I can just click clear, and that takes me back to the original order and also closes the dialog box. Sorting your data is a powerful way of gaining new insights. Play around with your data, and if you're worried, you can always make a backup copy. When you save data in a Tableau workbook, the program maintains an internal list or index of the values in each column. If you want to filter a column so only certain values appear, you can take advantage of that index by creating a selection filter. In this movie, I will show you how to create a selection filter to limit the data that appears in your worksheet. My sample file is the selection filter workbook. You can find that in the Chapter 5 folder of your exercise files collection. I have a table that contains product category sales by state. And what I'd like to do is limit the states that are displayed in this table. To do that, I need to drag the state field from the dimensions area. Now I'll scroll up a little bit so it's more obvious where it is. It's here under customer info. And to create my filter, I just drag the state field to the filters card. That displays the filter dialog box. And you can see at the top, just drag this over to the side so you can see the data behind it. At the top are a series of tabs. In this case, we're working with the General tab and Select from List. The list contains a checkbox for each of the values in the column. So if I were to clear Alabama, Arkansas, and Connecticut and click Apply, then those states would be hidden from the results. I can bring those 3 states back by clicking the All button and then clicking Apply again. If I want to identify states that I don't want to show, then I can check the Exclude box, and you can see in the list that any state with a check mark has a strike through. That means that it won't be shown. But if I clear the checkbox next to District of Columbia, Connecticut, and Georgia, and then click Apply, those 3 states appear in the list. So if you only want to show a few values, check the Exclude box, and then identify the items that you do want to display within the body of the table. In this case, I will clear the Exclude box, click the All button to bring everything back, and click Apply. When I'm done, I can either click OK to apply the filter that's currently in place and close the dialog box, or I can click Cancel and return the table to its original state. A lot of business data follows patterns, both in the sense that the data reflects daily, monthly, or quarterly trends, or that it contains similar values for related items. For example, the product name for a specific type of bike might include the word trail. In this movie, I will show you how to limit your display to values that follow a specific pattern by using wildcards in your filters. My sample file is the wildcard Tableau workbook. You can find it in the Chapter 5 folder of your exercise files collection. This workbook contains a visualization that's a table of data, and I have product category sales broken down by state. What I'd like to do is limit the states that are displayed. To do that, I need to create a filter. So I'll go over to the Dimensions area on the Data tab in the navigation pane, and I will drag the state field to the filters card. That's here at the top. So I'll drag it there, and doing so displays the filter dialog box. And I'll just drag that over to the side so we can see the data table without any trouble. The filter dialog box has a number of tabs. In this case, the one we want is wildcard, so I'll click that. And I have a number of different ways to create my rules. The first type of rule, and the one that is selected by default, is a contains rule. That means I can type a series of letters in the match value box, and when I click either apply or OK, the display will be limited to states that match that pattern. And I can tell that I'm filtering based on the state field because the filtered dialog box's title has state in square brackets. Just as a sample, I'll click in the match value field and I'll type the letters AN and click apply. When I do, I see that I have limited the display to only those states that contain the letters AN in that order in their name. If I wanted to go the other direction and exclude any states that have AN in their name, then I could check the exclude box, and you see does not contain, does not start with, and so on. Click apply, and I see the data with that filter applied. If I want to clear my filter, I can just click the clear button, click apply, and all the values come back. Now I'll go ahead and uncheck the exclude box and select the starts with radio button. Here I will look for states to start with the letter S and click apply. And I see South Carolina and South Dakota. Now note that this match was not case sensitive. I typed a lowercase s in the match value box, but South Carolina and South Dakota both start with uppercase s's, but Tableau didn't care. You can also have ends with. So I'll select that. And in the match value box, I'll type the letter A and click apply. And I see Alabama, Alaska, District of Columbia, Florida, and so on. And finally, I can also find exact matches. So if I click exactly matches, I can type north in the match value box, NORTH, and apply. And I get nothing. That's because I have no state that is named North. However, if I were to type North Dakota and click apply, I would in fact see that state. Once again, I can click clear. That gets rid of the criteria. Click OK, and all of my data comes back. When you analyze business data, you will often want to limit the range of values you look at. For example, you might only be interested in customers who have ordered more than $1,000 worth of products from you in the last month. If that's the case, you can create a condition filter to identify the customers who meet your criteria. I will demonstrate how to create these filters, and my sample file is the condition workbook. That's a Tableau file you can find in the Chapter 5 folder of the exercise files collection. This file contains a table visualization. It's broken down by product category and state. What I'd like to do is filter by quantity as relates to state. To do that, I need to drag the state field from the data area, and I can see it here under dimensions. So I will drag the state field to the filters card and release it. That displays the filter dialog box, which I'll drag to the side. The filter dialog box has 4 tabs, and in this case, I want to create a condition filter. So I'll click condition, and I see the tools that are available to me. The default is for no filter, but in this case, I want to filter by field. So I'll click the by field button, and that illuminates the controls underneath it. I will stay with quantity and also sum. So that means that I'm looking at the sum of the values for each state, not broken down by department, but the total. And now I need to decide my comparison operator. In this case, I want to display any row that has a total of less than 100. So I'll click the Comparison Operators button, select the less than symbol, and I'll edit the value in the box next to it so it reads 100. So now I will only see rows in the table that contain a total of quantity less than 100. And I'll click Apply, and there I see those rows. I don't see the total, but if I add them up by hand, then I do see, in fact, that all of the totals for each row are less than 100. You can also view the range of values that are available by clicking the Load button when the By Field Radio button is selected. So in this case, we are looking at the sum of sales for each row, and even though my filter only displays rows that contain less than 100 sales, if I click the Load button, I see that the minimum number of sales is 75, and the maximum is 510. If I want to remove this filter, I can click the None button, or I could have clicked Cancel. But now that I have everything turned off, I can click OK, and my table returns to its original configuration. One very common way to filter your data is to find either the top or bottom values. For example, you might want to find the 5 states that provided the most orders, and also identify the 5 or 10 that provided the least. In this movie, I will show you how to create top and bottom filters. My sample file is the top Tableau workbook, and you can find that in the Chapter 5 folder of the exercise files collection. I have a table visualization with category sales broken down by state. And what I want to do is to filter so that I see the states that provide both the top and bottom quantity of sales. To create that filter, I need to drag the state field from the Data tab under Dimensions to the Filters card, which is here to its right. So I'll release that, and when I do, I see the Filter dialog box. I'll drag the dialog box over to the side, and now we can see the entire table. I want to create a top filter, so I'll click the Top tab in the dialog box, and you see that I have a number of controls available to me. I want to filter by field values, so I will select the By Field Radio button, and you see that I'm able to create either a top or bottom filter, and I can also select the number of items that I want to display. I can type the number here, where 10 is currently, and I'll just type the number 5, so I'll see the top 5 results. I'll stay with the current measure, which is quantity. That's the field. I could use another measure if I wanted to. And also sum, although there are other aggregations or calculations that I could use. But sum is the most common. I'll go ahead and click Apply. And I see the 5 states that provided the most sales. I can also change that to the bottom 5 or any other number. So I'll click the top or bottom control and click bottom. And instead of 5, I'll type 7. Click Apply. And there I can see the 7 states that provided the lowest quantity of sales. I can remove the filter by clicking the None button, clicking Apply. And then to close the dialog box, I can either click OK if I had a filter applied, I could leave it applied and close the dialog box, or I can click Cancel and continue working with my data as before. Many times when you share a visualization with a colleague, you are explaining the data that's contained within it. These conversations are usually brief, so you want to filter your data as quickly as you can to get to your point. In this movie, I will show you how to create a quick filter based on your data. The sample file is the Quick Filter Tableau workbook, and you can find that in the Chapter 5 folder of the exercise files collection. To create other kinds of filters, you drag a field to the Filters card. To create a quick filter, all you need to do is hover your mouse pointer over the field by which you want to filter, and in this case it's state. click the downward pointing triangle that appears, and click Show Quick Filter. Doing so displays the Quick Filter dialog box that was hidden behind the Show Me pane, so I close that. And here on the right side, you can see all of the states that are available as we're filtering by state. I can clear the All box, and that hides all of the states. Now, if I add one by checking the box next to its name, I can do that. So I have Colorado, Idaho, and Maryland. And also note up at the top, when you hover your mouse pointer over the Quick Filter dialog, you can click the Filter X button, as I call it, to clear the filter. Or you can also find values. So for example, if I wanted to find the word South, I would see South Carolina and South Dakota. So now I can either hide them by clearing their checkboxes, and you see they don't appear between Rhode Island and Tennessee, or I can clear the filter, which also clears the search box. To close the Quick Filter dialog box, just go back to the state pill in the dimensions area, click the downward pointing triangle, and click Show Quick Filter to get rid of it. If you want to limit your data using a quick filter, you now know exactly how to do it. Filters help you discover important information about your business operations. When you're done with your filter, you can edit it or delete it from your worksheet. In this movie, I will show you how to perform those tasks, and my sample file is the Edit Filters Tableau workbook. You can find that in the Chapter 5 folder of your exercise files archive. The first thing I'll do is create a filter. So I'll limit the states that appear in my tree map. I'll go down to the state field, which is currently in the marks area, or on the marks card. I'll click the down arrow that appears when I hover my mouse pointer over the state pill, and I'll click Filter. And I'll just clear the checkboxes next to a couple of the states so there's a difference, and click OK. So now I have my filter applied to my tree map. And I can tell that it's there because the state pill appears on the filters card. If I want to edit the filter I just created, I can go up to the filters card and double-click the state pill. That opens the filter dialog box back up, and I can change the filter in any way I want to. So for example, I could also hide Alabama, Delaware, and Connecticut, and click Apply. And in the background, you could see that the tree map changed. And I could also make any other changes that I want to. I'll leave the filter in place so I can perform a few more tasks. So I'll just go ahead and click OK. You can also clear filters, which gets rid of them. To do that, go to the Worksheet menu and point to Clear, and click Clear Filter. That removes the filter from the field. I'll press Ctrl-Z to bring it back. Another way to delete a filter is to drag the pill from the filters card back to the data area. So I'll just drag the state pill from the filters to the data area, and doing that removes the filter entirely. So once again, filters serve a terrific purpose in Tableau, but when you're done with them, don't hesitate to get rid of them. Tableau lets you analyze large data collections efficiently. In this movie, I will show you how to create a summary or visualization that Tableau refers to as a crosstab. As my sample file, I will use the Create Crosstab Tableau workbook, and you can find it in the Chapter 6 folder of your exercise files collection. A crosstab is a data list that has one set of values for each column and another set of values for each row. So for example, you might have 5 categories of sales, and those would be the 5 columns, and you might have 50 states, and those would be the rows. Let me show you what a crosstab looks like by creating one here using the data that I have on hand. I will summarize the data by state of the customer making the order, also by department, and also by total revenue. So first thing I need to do is drag the state field to the rows area. There's that. And now I need to add the product category. That's here on the products table. So I'll drag over products category, put that in the columns area. And now I need to add in my revenue. That is a calculated field that I have in the measures area. So I'll drag that over to the data area. And when I do, based on my own settings, Tableau creates this visualization, which is a heat map. The squares or cells with darker colors represent larger values, and the cells with lighter colors represent smaller values. You might see a different visualization based on your own data or your own program settings. But now that we have our data lined up, we can create a crosstab. So to do that, I will click the Show Me tab here on the right side of the toolbar. And from the list of visualizations that appears, I'll click the one on the top left, and that's called a text table. And I've created my table, so I'll click the Show Me tab again to hide it. And as part of creating this table, you can see that Tableau flipped the state and product category labels. So I'll change that by dragging state down to the rows area, and then product category to the top. And there I see the organization that I was looking for. I have states described by each row, and I have my product category described by each column. Crosstabs, or data tables, are one of the easiest and most effective ways to summarize your data. I'm sure you're familiar with them through other programs such as Microsoft Excel, but in Tableau, they serve a wide number of purposes as well. Creating a crosstab from a list of data, which Tableau refers to as pivoting data, lets you analyze your data across both rows and columns. If you'd prefer to work with your data as a list, you can unpivot a crosstab to transform it into that format. I will show you how to do that in Tableau, and I'll use the Unpivot workbook, which you can find in the Chapter 6 folder of the Exercise Files collection. I have my crosstab set up, and what I want to do is create a list from this data. So in other words, instead of having row and column headers, I want everything to run vertically as a list. I can do that in a fairly straightforward manner by dragging the product category pill, in this case, to the right of the state pill in the rows shelf. So I'll just drag that down to the side, and you can see that I now have my data in a list. I have the state of Alabama, and then the product category of balance, dance, play, sport, and work, and so on. And that goes down for each state. Now I can continue to work with my data in Tableau, or if I want, I can export it to Excel. To export a crosstab or other data to Excel, I can open the worksheet menu, point to Export, and click Crosstab to Excel. And what that does is to create an Excel workbook based on the data that you see here. Crosstabs are extremely useful, but if you have a crosstab and you want to work with the data as a table, as opposed to keeping it as a crosstab in Tableau, you can always export it to Excel. Crosstabs divide your data into rows and columns, which makes some aspects of data analysis easier. That said, it can be difficult to read rows or columns of data when they're surrounded by other text. In this movie, I will show you how to focus on individual rows and columns. My sample file is the Focus Tableau workbook. You can find that in the Chapter 6 folder of the Exercise Files collection. I have a simple crosstab with data for sales arranged by state for each row and by product category for the columns. If I want to display a particular row of data, all I need to do is click its row header. So for example, if I wanted to see sales for the state of Georgia, I could just go down into my crosstab and click Georgia. And doing so highlights the data in that row. If I want to remove the highlight, I can either click anywhere outside of the visualization, or I can also press the Escape key. you can select a series of rows or columns. So let's say, for example, I wanted to highlight the dance and play columns. To do that, I could click dance and then hold down the Control key and click play, and then click work. And once again, pressing the escape key gets rid of my selection. If I want to select a series of contiguous rows or columns, I can use the shift key. So first I'll click Colorado and then hold down the shift key and click District of Columbia. And doing so highlights all of the rows in the range that I selected. And I'll press escape again to get rid of the selection and bring all the data back. You might have noticed that you do have some options after you click to highlight a row. So if I click District of Columbia, you see that I have this shortcut menu here. I can keep only the District of Columbia, which if I click it means that I create a filter, and you can see that here, State District of Columbia. I'll press Control-Z to undo that. If I hover over again, I can exclude it, meaning that I would hide it. I can also sort in ascending order, sort in descending order, or make it part of a set. In any event, when I'm done with the highlight, I can press the escape key and bring back all of my data. Highlighting rows and columns of data during presentations is a terrific way to make your point. Highlighting your data makes it much easier to read, and when you're done, all you need to do is press the escape key to bring everything else back. Tableau lets you visualize your data in many different ways. That said, the crosstab, which I have here, is an efficient and useful way of displaying just your data. What a crosstab doesn't do is add totals for the rows and columns automatically. So in this movie, I will show you how to augment your crosstab by adding totals and subtotals. For my sample file, I will use the Totals Tableau workbook, and you can find that in the Chapter 6 folder of your exercise files collection. So I have 50 rows of data. They are organized by state, and I also have 5 product categories. And what I'd like to do is find totals for each of the rows, which would be total revenue for each state, and also for each column, which would give me total revenue from the 5 columns that I have. To add these totals, I need to go to the Analysis menu, then point to Totals, and click Show Row Grand Totals. And you can see that I now have a new column over here on the right side. It's called Grand Total, and I'll just drag it a little bit so you can see the full text that I added. So I have a grand total for Alabama of 5,068, for Alaska 5,848, Arkansas 4,522, and so on. I can do the same thing for each of the columns. To create that grand total, I can once again go to the Analysis menu, point to Totals, and click Show Column Grand Totals. Now when I scroll down to the bottom of the crosstab, you can see the totals for each column here on the bottom row, labeled Grand Total. If I had another layer of organization, such as, say, a product name, then I could add subtotals. So I'll drag product name to the right of product category on the column shelf and drop it. And when I scroll up, you can see that I have all my products under balance. Then on the right, I also, as you can see, I have products for dance and going all the way over to the side. And I have my grand total. And I'll scroll back over. If I wanted to add subtotals, that is for balance, broken down by product, and then dance, and so on, I can go to the Analysis menu, point to Totals, and click Add All Subtotals. So now when I scroll to the right, you see that I have a subtotal for balance. Keep going to the right, another subtotal for dance, which is here, and I still have the grand total on the end. If I want to get rid of any of my grand totals or subtotals, I can just go back to the analysis menu, point to totals, and click remove all subtotals to remove them. Then go back, point to totals, and I can clear either show row grand totals or show column grand totals to get rid of them from the visualization. After you create a visualization, you might decide to change its type. In this movie, I will show you how to do that. My sample file is the Change Type Tableau workbook, and you can find it in the Chapter 7 folder of your exercise files collection. This workbook contains a single worksheet, and it has product sales data broken down by category and then by product name. The current visualization is a crosstab, but let's say that I want to create a chart based on this data. I can change the visualization type by clicking the Show Me tab here and displaying the list of visualizations that are available. Notice that some of the visualization types are displayed in color and others are grayed out. So for example, if I wanted, I could create horizontal bars or I could create stacked bars, but I couldn't create a line chart of any kind. I also couldn't create an area chart or a dual combination chart. So let's say that I want to create a horizontal bar chart. To do that, I'll click the horizontal bars button. Doing so displays that type of summary, and I can tell just at a glance that my yoga mat rolls, the larger items that are a collection of yoga mat material that can be cut down for individual students, generate quite a bit more revenue than most of the other balanced products. And if I hover my mouse pointer over that bar, I can see exactly how much. So it generates $12,595 over the period in question, as opposed to yoga straps, which brought in about 1/10 of that. Other visualizations include a tree map, or I could also create a heat map. Changing your visualization type in Tableau 9 is a straightforward process. If you don't find you're getting your message across using one, try another. When you create a visualization in Tableau, it's important that you get everything looking just right. That said, a little bit of formatting can go a long way. In this movie, I will show you how to apply formatting to the contents of a visualization. My sample file is the Data Appearance Tableau workbook. You can find it in the Chapter 7 folder of the exercise files collection. This visualization is a crosstab with data broken down by state and by product category. And if I want, I can change the contents of the visualization, in this case the text, using the controls on the marks card, and you can see that here. So if I want to change the color of the text, I can click the color button and select a new color. I'll make it a dark red and click away. I can also change the size of the text. So if I click size, I can drag to make it larger or to the left to make it smaller. And I can also change its alignment. So if I click text and then click the alignment controls down arrow, I can change its horizontal or vertical alignment. I can also change the direction of the text. I can turn it, and I can also wrap the text. So if the contents of a cell extended beyond the edge of the cell, I could have the text wrap, and that's turned either on or off. In this case, let's say that I want to change the horizontal alignment. I'll click Center, and doing so, as you can see, centers the data within each cell. The downside of doing that is that the digits no longer line up. You can see that 54 doesn't line up with the 54 in Colorado because the balance data for Colorado has one extra digit. So sometimes centering can work, other times it won't. Just use your best judgment. You can also change the contents of a visualization using the controls available to you on the Format menu. So I'll open the Format menu, and you can see here that there are various font controls. So I'll click that, and here you see you have more fine-grained control over the contents of your visualization. So if I want to change the default text for the pane, I can click this down arrow to open a dialog box, and I can make the text larger, or I can change its font. On my system, I have Arial Narrow available, so I'll click that, and you can see the change. And I can also change the color of the text here. So I'll just make it a basic black. You can also change the text that appears in your headers. In this case, I have Arial 8 point. And let's say that I make that 10 point and bold. Doing so increases the size of the headers. And you can see at the moment that the headers are much larger, and actually annoyingly so, than the text that displays the data in the body of the crosstab. So I'll click away from the control and press Control Z. And now my headers are back to their normal size. I can also change the text size in a similar way for totals and grand totals. Another way to format a visualization, in this case specifically a crosstab, is to open the Format menu and click Shading. This displays the shading controls over in the navigation panel on the left. And you can see here that I can change the shading either for the entire worksheet or for totals or grand totals. But what I would like to focus on is row banding. You can see in the body of the worksheet that every second row has a very slight banding color. It allows you to pick them apart visually. So if you need to count 5 rows, you can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the banding actually makes it a little easier. If you want to change the color of the banding, then you can go down to the row banding area and click the Pane Controls down arrow and select a different band color. In this case, I'll go a little bit darker, and you can see how that affects the data within the body of the table. Row banding is extremely useful, but it's a very personal thing. So even though I chose to go a little bit darker here to increase the contrast, your preferences might be different. Finally, I'd like to show you how to change the borders in a visualization. Again, that's available on the Format menu. And I'll go down and click Borders. The Borders task pane appears over on the left, and I can change the borders for the sheet, individual rows, or columns. Now I can change the borders in my sheet, and let's say that I want to do it for the row divider. For that, I'll go down to the row divider area. I'll click the pane control, and I'll click the 4th control from the left, and you can see that the line became much more prominent. I can also make it darker, such as a darker shade of gray. So you see that line, and you also see the same border down at the bottom. So now the top and bottom of the visualization underneath the headers and above any grand total that we might have at the bottom is much more visually distinctive. Tableau is a terrific data visualization tool, and like most programs of its type, it looks best when you allow it to take up your full screen and have the visualizations as large as possible. But we also work in a modern workplace, which means that oftentimes we're doing more than one thing at a time, and we can't devote all of our screen real estate to a single program. We also do a lot of work on tablets and smartphones, which have their own sizing difficulties when it comes to viewing data. If you need to change the size of a visualization for any reason, you can do so within Tableau. And in this movie, I will show you how to do that. I'll base my work on the Resize sample workbook. You can find that in the Chapter 7 folder of your exercise files collection. My visualization is a tree map, and let's say that I just want to change the size of the visualization card here. To do that, I can hover my mouse pointer over its edge, and you see that when I go over the right or the left edge, it turns into a double-headed arrow pointing horizontally. I can hold down the left mouse button and drag to the side, and you see the visualization gets larger in that direction. If I drag it back, it gets smaller. One thing to note is that if you decrease the size of your visualization, some values or some labels that were previously displayed might be hidden. And you can see that for these states here, such as Massachusetts and Wyoming. To change a visualization size in the vertical direction, hover your mouse pointer over either the top or the bottom, and when it changes to a double-headed vertical arrow, click and drag, and you can make it smaller. But now let's switch to a different type of visualization, and that is a crosstab. So I'll click the Show Me tab, click the Text Tables button. There that is, and I'll hide Show Me again. I currently have data arranged by state. That changed when I changed my visualization type. So I will drag the product category field from the data area to the column shelf to create a new crosstab layout. I can change the size of my crosstab. Once again, I can hover my mouse pointer over the right edge of the visualization itself, the data area. You can see that I have my horizontal arrows again. I'll drag that to the side, and doing so changes the width of the entire visualization. If I want to drag it back, I can do so, making it as narrow as I like. I can also make the size of my cells a little bit either taller, shorter, or wider or more narrow. To do that, I can go to the Format menu, point to cell size, and I can make them taller, wider, narrower, bigger, smaller, make them square, or just have them fit their text. So just to show you what that looks like, I'll make them bigger. That adjusted the items. I'll go to Format, Cell Size, and call it Text Cell. And doing so changes so the text is displayed more effectively. Resizing a visualization allows you to gain or use valuable screen real estate. If you're working with a crosstab, you can also change cell size so that it fits your display more effectively. You can often make your Tableau visualizations easier to comprehend by making them larger. You can either resize the visualizations within the Tableau program window, or, as I'll show you to do in this movie, you can get rid of most of the user interface and display them in presentation mode. I'll show you how to do that using the presentation mode sample workbook. You can find that in the Chapter 7 folder of your exercise files collection. To display this visualization in presentation mode, I can go up to the toolbar, and at the far right there is a button that looks like a projection screen called Presentation Mode. And I can click that to shift over to presentation mode. Doing so displays your presentation, and it takes up the entire screen. Pretty much all of the interface items are gone, except for along the bottom, there is the sheet tab bar. So if this workbook contained more than one worksheet, you would see tabs for each of them, and you would be able to switch. Also on the right side, we can show multiple sheets as film strips, move among sheets, exit full screen, or exit presentation mode. In this case, I'll click exit presentation mode, but I also could have pressed the F7 key. Presentation mode is very useful. If you only want to display a finished visualization, then you could make it as large as possible and have minimal user interface elements distracting from the data and the message you're trying to get across. You can create many different types of visualizations in Tableau, and I'd like to take a few minutes to show you a specific type of visualization that perhaps you don't use as much. That visualization is called a highlight table, and it uses color to display the relative proportion of values that are contributed by cells in a crosstab. My sample file is the Highlight Tableau workbook, and you can find it in the Chapter 7 folder of the Exercise Files archive. A highlight table is also called a heat map, and you can create one in Tableau by creating a visualization here. I have a crosstab already set up. Then go to the Show Me tab, which is at the right edge of the toolbar, and then click the Highlight Table button, and that's at the far right of the first row. So I'll click that, and I'll close the Show Me panel by clicking its title bar, and you can see that I have a range of colors as well as a range of numbers. The lighter the color, the lower the number, and the darker the color, the larger the number. And if you look down to the left, below the marks card, you can see a new card here called Sum of Revenue, and it shows you the color range, going from the minimum value of $33.52 to the maximum value of $29,919. If you want, you can change the colors that are displayed in the highlight table. To do that, you go to the marks card and click the color control, and you're able to edit the colors by clicking the Edit Colors button. There are a number of ways that you can change the colors. For example, instead of using the automatic palette, which is selected by default, you can click the palette controls down arrow and select from a wide variety of other colors and other patterns. I'll leave it to you to decide which one is best, but just to show you what it looks like when you change it, I'll go for the orange. And I'll drag this over to the side and click Apply. And there you can see you have the lighter orange colors, which are the lower values, and the darker colors, which are the higher values. There are other options available to you. If you want to find those, you can click the Advanced tab, and you can set up different ranges of values, setup steps, and so on. In this case, I'll just stay with what I have, so I'll click OK and close the dialog box. I use highlight tables or heat maps a lot in my own presentations, and I bet you'll find ways to use them too. One of the most common ways to summarize categories of data is by using bar charts. A bar chart uses horizontal or vertical bars to show the magnitude of values across a range of categories. Those categories could be business departments or even individual products. Vertical bar charts are often called column charts. And in this movie, I will show you how to create those types of charts. My sample file is called Bar Charts. That is a Tableau workbook you can find in the Chapter 8 folder of the exercise files collection. I will go ahead and add some fields and values to my visualization. I'll start by scrolling down in the data area, and I'll drag the product category to the rows area, and I'll drag revenue to the data area. So there I have my values. These values are divided nicely into categories, so it makes sense that I can use a bar chart to summarize them. I will click the Show Me tab's title bar to display it, and from the list of visualizations that appear, I'll click the horizontal bars button. And there's my result. This visualization shows the relative values for each of the 5 departments. I can also see its approximate value using the scale at the bottom, or I can hover my mouse pointer over one of the bars and I can see the exact value. In this case, work is 255,878. Sport is 202,000 and a little more. Play is way down at 17,385, and so on. If I want to convert this to a vertical bar chart or a column chart, I can do that by swapping the positions of the product category and revenue pills. So I can drag sum of revenue down, which creates a different kind of column chart. This one is divided by product category. But then when I drag product category up to columns, you see that I get a column chart. Whether you prefer a bar chart with horizontal bars or a column chart with vertical bars all depends on your personal preferences and the needs of your visualization. Bar charts, which summarize values using horizontal bars to display relative magnitude, are frequently used in business to display time data or category data when a column chart won't fit in a visualization. In this movie, I will show you how to create 2 specific subtypes of bar charts. Those are stacked bar charts and side-by-side bar charts. My sample file is called Stacked Bars. That is a Tableau workbook that you can find in the Chapter 8 folder of your exercise files collection. I have created a horizontal bar chart here, and you can see that I have product category as the row headers. I have balance, dance, play, sport, and work, and the values that are displayed within the chart come from the sum of revenue. Let's say that I want to add a second field. For example, each product individually. That field is product names, so I'll grab that from out of the dimensions area. You might need to scroll down to see that, just based on your starting position within the file. I'll drag product name to the rows shelf to the right of product category. That will put it at a lower level of organization, so we see product category first, starting with balance, then dance, and then the product names. This is an interesting chart, and it allows us to gain insights into the data, but we do have other options. I'd like to show those to you now. I'll click the Show Me tab, and you can find that at the far right of the toolbar. And from the visualization types that are available, I'll click Stacked Bars. Doing that gives me a column chart, and you'll notice that it was reorganized slightly by taking the product name field over to the marks area, or over to the marks card. I have 5 vertical bars or columns, and if I hover my mouse pointer over a particular section, such as here, I can see that the computer desk product under the work category brought in revenue of $21,315. If I go down to the executive chair, I see the revenue is over $46,000. And the same is true for any of the individual bits. I only sold, for example, $1,659 worth of hockey pucks. This is a rather cramped visualization, although it is useful because I can hover my mouse pointer over a section and get the results. If I want to see the results formatted differently, I can use what's called a side-by-side bar chart. That is the last item on the third row in the Show Me panel. So I'll click that, and I can see my results broken out differently than before. Rather than having vertical separations, as is the case with the standard bar chart, here I have horizontal, and also these items are differentiated by color. So under balance, I have my products there. And again, they're separated by color. Same for dance, and all the way across to the other categories. If you have room in your presentation, side-by-side bar charts are a great way to compare your data. Much of the data you visualize in Tableau will have a time, day, or date associated with it. For example, you might have a summary that tracks daily sales at your company's stores. In this movie, I will show you how to summarize data by creating line charts, which are perfect for time series data, and area fill charts, which also display time series data, but slightly differently. My exercise file is the line chart Tableau workbook, and you can find it in the Chapter 8 folder of the exercise files collection. I have a number of fields available for use. I have in the dimensions area date and department, and then down under measures I have revenue. So basically I have a data collection that tells me how much each department made and on what day. I can add these values to the visualization I have set up now. So to do that, I will drag date to the columns area, and I will drag the sum of revenue, or the revenue measure, to rows. And the result doesn't look very exciting. I have a single point somewhere above 90,000 and only 1 year of 2015. One thing you should note is that the pill for the date field is currently set to year. If I click the down arrow at the right side of the pill, you see that I can select from other measures. So I can have the year, I can have the quarter, the month, or the day. So from the list here, I will click day, and when I do, Tableau creates a line chart that has sales data for the 20th, 21st, and so on. If I want to format that properly as a line chart, I can click the continuous lines, and there you see I have it. I'll close the Show Me palette, and you can see the data in a larger size visualization. But now let's say that I want to add multiple lines. I can do that by dragging the department field to the marks area. So I'll drag that there, and you can see I have multiple lines, but they're all the same color. I can fix that by displaying the Show Me palette again and clicking lines. I'll hide that once more. So you can see that now I have a line for each of the departments. They're color-coded, and you can see the legend here. So balance is blue, dance is orange, and so on. But now let's say that rather than this admittedly rather confusing collection of lines, I want to see how much each department contributes on a given day. So what I'd love to do is have a line, a total that got bigger and bigger based on the contributions of each of these individual departments. And that's where an area fill chart comes in. So I need to change the visualization type. I'll go to the Show Me palette. I'll click its title bar, and then I'll click the area chart here for continuous. I'll close that again. And here I have my summary, and it appears to be much easier to follow. The top line, as I mentioned, is the total. So here you can see that on day 25, balance had $47.66 in sales, but the actual total, if we read along the legend or along the vertical axis here, it's about 17,500 or so. And you can tell from color coding, again, you have the legend here, what each of the departments contributes. Line charts and area fill charts are a terrific way to track your data across time. If you want to see the contribution of each department or each element, then an area fill chart is a great way to do that. You can often gain important insights into your data by creating a pie chart, which displays the contributions of several parts to a total. For example, you could display the percentage of all revenue by department, with each wedge of the pie representing an individual department. In this movie, I will show you how to create pie charts from Tableau data. My sample file is the pie chart workbook. You can find that in the Chapter 8 folder of the exercise files collection. The data that I'm looking at has daily sales for 5 departments. I want to create a pie chart from this data. So within the visualization, I will drag the department to the rows area, and then I will drag the revenue measure to the data area here. So there I have my table summary, and with that data, I can create a pie chart, which I'll click here in the Show Me palette. And there we have it. That is a pie chart, and it displays the contribution of each part to the total. You can tell which department is which using the color codes here, or if you hover your mouse pointer over a wedge, you can see that orange is the dance department and gave you revenue of $21,313. In some cases, you will collect data with 2 attributes, or measures, which you can then graph using a scatter plot. For example, if you tracked temperature and rainfall, you could plot temperature on one axis and rainfall on the other, and look at the resulting scatter plot to see if there was a pattern. In this movie, I will show you how to use measures to create a scatter plot. My sample file is the scatterplot Tableau workbook. You can find that in the Chapter 8 folder of your exercise files collection. So taking a look over in my data area, I see that I have no dimensions, but I do have 2 measures, frequency and spending. And my goal is to create a scatter plot that compares the number of visits or frequency that a customer visits a store in a given year with the amount that they spend in total. So the first thing I'll do is to drag frequency to the columns area. I want to put each of these measures on a separate axis. So frequency goes in the columns area and spending goes in the rows area. And what I get is a scatter plot, but I just have 1 point, and that is because it's showing the sum of the frequency and the sum of the spending. And you can see those summaries here on the pill for frequency, which says sum, and the same for spending. So what I need to do in this case is to change the way that Tableau looks at this data. So I'll go to the columns area and click the down arrow for the frequency pill. I'll go down to about the middle of the drop-down menu, and I will change it from a measure to a dimension. And you can see that my graph changes immediately. I have frequencies, and I also have spending. So that's interesting in and of itself, but I don't really have time series data, so a line chart isn't the best way to graph it. Instead, I'll go up to rows and hover my mouse pointer over the spending pill and make the same change. I'll go from a measure to a dimension. And there you see my scatter plot. I have an individual who came in once and spent $450. Someone who came in 10 times spent a total of $450. Someone who came in 20 times only spent $275. So you can see my vertical axis doesn't start at 0. And then I have a cluster of customers who came a lot and spent a lot. So 25 times spending $500, 27 spending $540, and so on. So as you can see, scatter plots allow you to see relationships between data. What you need to remember is to change these measures from measures to dimensions. When you do that for both of your values, the scatter plot will appear as you see here.